We are so excited that those of you who made it on time are here. My name is Reverend Berethil Soto. I am the director of the Young Adult Leadership Development Program at NBA, and I am so excited to be with each and every one of these women for tonight's panel. If you already are here, and if you don't mind, just for us to know where are you joining us from, if you don't mind putting on the chat, telling us where are you from. You don't have to out yourself with your whole name. We're not going to ask you a lot of things. Just let us know where are you joining us from in the chat, if you don't mind, just so that we know who is joining us tonight, if you are able. Now, if you're driving, please do not tell us, and please do not use the chat. All right, we have people from Philly. Hey, Dad, look. We have people joining us from Nashville. Welcome, Corinne. Welcome, Tamika. I know I see some other folks. Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Welcome, Kara. Nashville. All right, we have a couple of folks coming from Nashville. Portland, Southern California. Welcome, Yung Young. Brenda, welcome. And as people continue joining in, please let us know where are you joining us from. As we start this conversation, again, I just want to welcome you all. If you're just joining us, my name is Reverend Berethil Soto, the director of the Young Adult Leadership Development Programs at NBA. And tonight we are going to have the first of a series of panels on mentorship within cultural contexts. I'm really excited about this. We're already having conversation to have a panel like this for what does mentorship look like for Asian Pacific Islander communities. We're also going to have a conversation like this about mentorship within Hispanic and Latinx communities. So we're excited to kick us off, and we're so grateful that our guests here are being the ones launching this series. Tonight, we're creating a space that honors the sacred power of mentorship among Black women. Now, I want to make this clear, as it's going to be the case with all of the other conversations we will have. This is not a one-size-fits-all kind of cookie cutter. This is a conversation that we're going to lean into the richness of our diverse experiences. So not because we're having a conversation with these marvelous Black women, that means that that's across all Black women, and that's a generalized conversation. However, each one of them present and will share an experience that is valid and that may have some crossover across experiences and generations. As we begin, I invite you to listen deeply, reflect openly, and hold space for wisdom that will emerge from each generation represented here. We have Gen Xers, Millennials, Gen Zs, Xennials, and so I hope that if you are either one of those generations or a different generation, you can engage in the chat. We love a good call and response. So we love seeing you react in the chat, saying things that you want to respond as we are saying, presenting and sharing our experiences. And if you have a question, we may not be able to respond it immediately, but if you're like me, and if you don't write down the question that you want to ask, you lose it, please go ahead and put it on the chat. We have a fabulous team behind the scenes. You may see someone say, sign in as NBA Cares Tech Support. They are going to help us to keep track of the questions that you post in the chat. So feel free to do that. And at the end, we will have some time to dedicate to any Q&As that may arise. So I will want to just have a brief introduction of each one of our presenters. And if you indulge me, I will start with Reverend Sherisna Jean-Marie. She is the Dean of the Disciples Divinity House at Vanderbilt. She is the first woman and person of color to occupy this role. She's a pioneer in her own right, as she was the first to serve as the Director of Leadership and Organizing at Children's Defense Fund, the first to serve as the Director of Racial Justice Ministries at Scarlett Bennett Center, and the first woman and first person of color to serve as the Dean of Chapel at Bethany College. Not only is she that, but she's also the first woman to serve as a chaplain at Jarvis College, Christian College, and the first woman to be ordained by the Christian Church Disciples of Christ at New Covenant Christian Church. As you may know or may not, Reverend Sharisna is also the founder of the Co-Conspirator Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that seeks to create spaces for individuals to confront and eradicate systemic, social, structural, and institutional racism and provide opportunities for healing from racial trauma. She is a co-contributor for 5 book projects, a mentor, social entrepreneur, community organizing, an anti-racist activist, and an international teacher and preacher. She holds a bachelor's degree in public communications from Kean University and a master's of divinity from Vanderbilt Divinity School. During commencement, she was awarded the coveted Florence Conwell Prize for outstanding preaching. Welcome, Reverend Sharisna. We also welcome Reverend Chesla Nicholson. She is a minister, a consultant, a coach, working with individuals, groups, and institutions on mental health, sexuality, and faith formation. Her expertise lies in the nexus of sexuality, spirituality, self-care, and social justice. Reverend Chesla earned a Bachelor's of Art in Psychology from Spelman College, followed by a Master's of Divinity and Master's of Arts in Marriage and Family Therapy from Christian Theological Seminary. Her education, training, and experience frames her bold vision that intersects counseling, sexuality, spirituality, and faith formation. Currently, Reverend Chesla serves as one of the ordained ministers of the Root Cause Christian Church, a licensed resident in marriage and family at the Peninsula Pastoral Counseling Center, a mental and spiritual wellness professional with the Root Cause Collective, and a certified Prepare and Reach facilitator. Welcome, Reverend Chesla. We're excited that you're here with us today. We also have the Reverend Dr. Crystal Williams. She is a graduate of Jarvis Christian Church and, a graduate of Christian University and a Christian Theological Seminary. She received her Doctor of Ministry from United Theological Seminary. She's a trustee of Christian Theological Seminary, and currently she serves on the board of directors of the Christian Church Formation Foundation and the board of directors for Global Ministries and National Convocation. She was ordained in 1998 at Southport Christian Church in Indianapolis, and she was previously the regional minister in Tennessee for 8 years and the associate regional minister in Illinois, Wisconsin for 17 and a half years. Currently, she is the fabulous regional minister of my own region, the Indiana region. So welcome, Dr. Williams. And last but not least, we have Kathleen Tope. She's a passionate and creative storyteller dedicated to amplifying diverse and underrepresented voices. She's a proud double alumna of Drexel University in Philadelphia. We see that some people are logging in from there. So she received there some degrees. She received her bachelor's in screenwriting and playwriting, as well as a master's in business administration. She is the recent recipient of the NDA's Young Adult Leadership Development Grant, which provided support to the Seeds of Faith Garden that Kathleen sprouted at her church, Faith Christian Church in South Los Angeles, California. Apart from being the leader of the garden ministry, Kathleen also serves as the youth and young adult leader at her church, where she emphasizes the importance of sacred listening and the hearing of God's word to her peers. So welcome everyone. So excited that you are here. We are elated. I am elated to have you all here. And in the interest of time, let's just get to it. And I would love for us to start with something that came up as we gathered for the planning of this panel, when we were talking about which routes to take. And I think that that's a very insightful way to start, because it actually gave birth to the name of this panel, this webinar itself. And this idea of how mentorship relationships take place within different cultures. And I'm talking about this sacred concept of sisterhood. How is sisterhood different from mentorship? Or is it the same? And if you could help us all understand that.
Well, I'll jump right in. And I always say, Bere, that you don't have to take anything that I say for law, but I invite you to investigate it. And so this thing that I'm going to say, I invite you to investigate it. That in community, we get sisterhood and mentorship, and that this comes from something greater. And Black women, we do it differently. So there aren't really any tags that you can put on it because we do it differently.
Like, what do you mean? Or if you or anybody wants to tell us, like, what's different about it?
Well, because I think, I don't want to, I think there are tags that we put on. It's got to look like this, or it's got to be this way. It's got to be somebody 20 years older, or it's got to be, someone who's well established. I think we do it differently. I think sometimes there's a friending and a gathering. And sometimes it may look like a person walking into a room with 5 other Black women, and they start from the Rudy to the Tootie. And when you leave that spot, you have been fully mentored. You have been fully vested. So, I mean, I think that's just one entree or one picture of doing it differently. It's not just like, here's my card, give me a call.
I'd like to jump in and say I am so honored to be here and grateful for the invitation and the work that we have been doing together. Bera, I am so honored to work alongside you around this particular work with my sisters on this call. I agree with Bishop. And for those who don't know, the Reverend Dr. Krista Williams is a mentor, friend, and I refer to her affectionately as Bishop. It is a reflection of a culture and tradition that I come from, and it is a way of honoring her role in the church, also in my life. And I think that's important, particularly for Black women who are called into spaces and roles that have not been traditionally built for us. And that's what sisterhood looks like, right? I agree with Dr. Williams in terms of the ways in which Black women tend to show up differently for one another. As a womanist practitioner, where experience have authority, I would suggest one of the reasons why we tend to do it different is because we share a particular experience that has much authority. And so the ways in which we show up in spaces with one another, whether we know each other or not, we see each other in a unique way. We see each other through that unique experience that we have being Black and being a woman and always being a problem in society. And so I think the ways in which we show up in relationship has a kind of intimacy because that intimacy is a form of survival. It's a form of encouragement, support, and I would even suggest it's a form of healing from our trauma.
And with that form of healing in mind, I actually often think of Dr. Katie Cannon's words about doing the work our soul must have, even in the way I think about sisterhood and mentorship, right? Because there is healing, and there's healing from trauma, but there's also just general joy, creation, and sisterhood practices, which for me in my experience have been general and broad. Like I look out for you, you look out for me. Um, we catch, you know, we're the only two in a room. We catch each other's eyes. We don't even have to say anything, but I got you. And not even I got you, I see you. We're in this together, right? To the, you know, being stuck in the bathroom and there's no toilet paper. Hey, I got you. You're covered. I'm not even in here using the bathroom, but I'm gonna go get some so you can have some. To mentorship, which is more of a I see this gift in you, and I'm gonna help you cultivate your gift in the way that you're called to live into that. Um, Not necessarily in the way I want you to, but simply again, I see you and I'm going to help you be you with all the gifts, skills, and resources that I already have. Um, and all of
So
that for me is soul work.
can I
So if I,
add with
yeah,
can I
go ahead, Reverend.
can I
Yeah.
add with that? I see you as also a form of a way that we have in relationship where we have permission to correct one another as well, right? So I remember the time where Bishop took me to lunch and we spent 2 3 hours about an endeavor that I was going after, and she sat there and listened to me in my inexperienced self, right? And then she corrected me, and before I left I had everything I needed to succeed, right? And so the sisterhood piece is all of those things that we've mentioned. And I often say only love can correct, right? So we have a way to check one another. Chess. I remember when we got a clergy sister group that started out in a hotel room from General Assembly. And we did what we do, we call it, well, I won't go there. They don't need to know everything. However, I remember that time when I was struggling at a space and I was doing something and they corrected me all while affirming me. And I left General Assembly getting everything I needed to succeed. And so part of this way of journeying alongside of someone who shares the lived experiences, the unique lived experiences that you have, when you leave, you do leave with joy because you also leave with everything you needed in order for you to be able to survive.
Mhm. Yeah.
I want to
Wow.
just jump in real quick before Pastor Bede comes. You know, I was thinking about the movie 6888. There's a line in there that Kerry Washington says, just when her soul was about to break, something opened up and took me further. And every time I hear that line, I think about sisterhood and I think about the community and mentorship. Because whether it's a celebration and your soul is about to break open and you need help being tutored or mentored into your own celebration, or when something turbulent is happening in your life, just when you are about to break, something happens and takes you further. That's what happens with sisterhood. That's what happens with mentorship. You go further.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if I'm hearing correctly, please, if not, correct me. So the difference really relies on this sense of mutuality in sisterhood, because sometimes mentorship can be a little bit more hierarchical at times. However, from the Black women's perspective, there is this component, just as Reverend Chesla was mentioning, um, of I see you, I got you, and I know that you would do the same for me, whether it is at the restroom or whether it is at a lunch when we're talking about decisions that I have to make about my life. So there is this sort of mutuality of the exchange in that relationship. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think there is a mutuality that comes by way of our social location. But just
Yeah.
by simply being Black and being women in this country, where we show up in a familiar way, um, I also don't want to romanticize, right, this notion of sisterhood. And I appreciate what Dr. Williams said about go do your own investigation. And again, as a woman, as practitioner, experience has authority. I do want to name that we don't always do sisterhood in this way, or mentorship relationships along about relationships with Black women don't always mirror that. That's our experience. I do think there are relationships that are difficult and hard because we share a particular experience, and that trauma causes us to see one another with suspicion, right? That trauma causes us to see one another with the kind of distrust because you remind me of the pain, right? You remind me of the trauma of the experience that wasn't so great. So I don't want to romanticize this notion of sojourning alongside one another. But I do think it's important for us to name it is a unique one because of our experience.
Oh, definitely.
And
Yeah.
because I'm taught that you can't go far without the voices of people who are younger than you. I want to tap Miss Taplin in and kind of hear her voice and perspective around this notion of Black womanhood and sisterhood. I'm gonna sit and listen, sis.
Yeah, of course. So it's interesting that, well, especially what Dr. Williams was saying about how mentorship usually looks like, here's my card, give me a call, and we'll talk when we talk, like put a time on my calendar, right? And I think that with sisterhood, it really is, I see you as a woman in this position. And not only do I see you as a woman who's trying to be where I'm at, but I was you at a certain point. And I think a lot of people don't, well, I'll just talk about my experience being in the entertainment industry. It's a dog eat dog world in the entertainment industry, right? A lot of people are trying to get into a certain room and be a certain person. And there's a lot of people at a specific position, say like an executive position, that want to open doors, but also people that are like, no, this is my position. I want to stay here, you know? And so it's hard as someone who's younger to see, oh, well, I don't want to step on any toes. I know that my time is coming soon, but what happens when the person that you're trying to get mentorship from doesn't want you to take their seat or sees you as somebody that's trying to take their seat? It's difficult to navigate that and see that, you know, you're trying to also get into the same room because there's not even a lot of us in that room to begin with. But the people that are in that room work so hard to get there, and they don't want to be able to, they don't want to let go of something that they work so hard for. And I think that's why mentorship and sisterhood, those things need to be intertwined, especially me as a Black woman working in the entertainment industry, trying to become a filmmaker, trying to be, you know, an Issa Rae, trying to become a Quinta Brunson. Those are really big names, but very, very small pool of people that actually get to that level, right? And so when it comes to actually getting to that journey and finding a mentor, it requires intentionality on both of our sides, where I'm not someone that's trying to take up your position, but you are also someone that's trying to push me and not try to make me do the hard, dirty jobs that you had to do, try to work my way up from the mailroom now to just being someone's assistant, getting coffee. There's some people that say, you know, you have to work your way up. And I completely agree with that. And there's people that are, well, if I had to go through it, you have to go through it. And so I just think that there needs to be a two-way street for mentorship. There has to be some type of way where I see you, you see me. I'm not trying to just, you know, get a coffee and talk about the ways that I'm supposed to navigate through this job. No, tell me how I'm supposed to navigate as a Black woman in this job. Tell me how I'm supposed to be able to deal with something like layoffs. Tell me how I'm supposed to deal with something like, you know, not really understanding what job I want yet. Because as a Gen Zer, like, yes, we're very vocal. Yes, we're very, you know, intent on, we want to do it this way, we want to do it that way, but we're lost. And, you know, speaking for myself, we're kind of confused about what we want to do. So having a mentor that also pushes us to and challenges us to really, really think outside the box and listen to what we actually have desires and passions in, that's really what we want. We want to feel heard. We want to be in a position where we can have a community within mentorship. So it's not only us putting a time on a calendar and talking about what my professional goals are, but as a person, how am I supposed to show up in a space where I'm not actually wanted and I'm already outnumbered? How do I do that?
I want to say this because I just, Chaplain, I'm smiling like a chess cat over here. And it's because until I can see you and see myself in you, until I can look into your eyes and see myself in you, it is hard to do that. And until I can push past some of the trauma of getting the coffee, of being called girl or gal, it's hard to give way to the spirit of mentorship and sisterhood. And that's the reason why I say we do it differently. Because I'm listening and I'm thinking about the number of times sisters in my life pulled me aside and said, "This person belongs to you. Stop, reflect, see, work on your own trauma because you have something to give." Which makes it beautiful, and it makes it the reason why I think we do it differently. Because, I don't know about you, Taplin, but in my generation, my mother's sisters and her friends, my mother's friends, they were aunties.
Yeah.
And their children were our cousins. And we were a bit more no cousin than a man on the moon. But today, we still call each other cousin because Aunt so-and-so, she could do something to help my mother rear me. And so even back in the South, we didn't do this much in the North, but in the South, older women were Mama Jackie, Mama Lois, Mama, Frida, because they all mentored and took a portion or took pride in making sure you were the best person you could be. And until I can see you clearly and see myself through your eyes, it's hard to do it. But I know we can.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes me think about not just the Black women in ministry who have done dual duty as sister and or mentor, but also like when you say that, I think of the Black women teachers that I ended up having in, Newport News, Virginia, which wasn't a lot. So that the Black women teachers and counselors became mentors for me, right? There were always special conversations with my parents. Like, my parents didn't get married till I was 10. Those Black women teachers and counselors were at my parents' wedding, right? Because they invested specifically in me. They saw me in their classes, even when I was, a smart mouth, child, right? They didn't seek to punish me, right? There was some discipline, right? Where they would tell my parents that they could do it. But it wasn't just like, oh, that's a bad child. It was like, oh, okay, this is a curious child, and we need to put extra work in to make sure that we're helping her to be her best self, right? Not just a smart aleck, if you will, but a mature, smart child getting the resources like every other smart kid. And that has benefited me my whole life.
I also want to name that this notion of mentorship as it relates to this idea of sisterhood is not the only way in which Black women show up as mentors, right? And I think it's intentionality. So I have some spaces where I'm considered mentor, that it's sisterly, right? There's this notion of sisterhood. And then there are some professional settings where I have mentees or I like what I like to say, conversation partners, because Taplin and I agree, there's a mutual understanding that there's a exchange that happens, right? And so I want that experience to reflect how we label it, right? And so conversation partners is what I like to call folks who have seen something in me and say, you have something to give me, right, for my professional development. Those types of relationships are not sisterly, they're professional. And oftentimes, because Black women, in the various different ways society has labeled us, people get too familiar with us. And sometimes we too get too familiar with one another, right? Where the professional boundary can have blurry lines. And so in professional settings, I'm very intentional about using titles. In professional settings, I'm very intentional about communicating my intent in the relationship, because I don't want the nature of the relationship to be blurry, right? And so, and I think there is a need for professional relationships that have professional boundaries, that is not familiar for my professional development. Because in the real world, all women are not sisters, and I'm talking about Black women too, right? In the real world, there's not a familiarity, there's a professional boundary that is in place. And I would be a disservice to the women that I walk with if I didn't offer them, right, professional boundaries for their professional development. So I think it's important for us to understand that while the Black woman's experience is unique, it has various different branches on this deep rooted tree. And the various different branches is around intent, and the intent in terms of why we're in relationship. There are some women who I'm in relationship with professionally cannot call me by my first name, call me by my title. It protects you and me, because if you call me Charizna, I don't know what's going to show up. But if you call me Reverend Pastor Dean, then it positioned me and posture me in a way that reminds me that I'm a servant leader. Charisma, I'm an auntie, I'm a sister, right? And so, and I think to go back to my comment about Bishop, I think part of the professional development piece, right? So we talk about mentorship, right? And one of the tenets of mentorship is professional development, right? I think it is an imperative that Black women who are in roles with titles, we use them. Because oftentimes you're the first, oftentimes you're there and you're not respected, oftentimes you're in spaces, professional spaces, where you got to work twice as good, right? And you still don't get the kind of respect or compensation, right?
Yeah.
Because that particular role title probably wasn't built for you. And so each time I show up as dean, right, I'm breaking barriers. And I'm also changing minds, what's possible and where Black women supposed to be.
Yeah. That makes me think about the full like spectrum of sisterhood and or mentorship, and how I've never actually had an official mentor, right? I've had people who've come in my life, and I don't think I have been an official mentor for people. Um, but the unofficials, right, the first person I think about, particularly in ministry, is Reverend Billy Bridges, and sometimes that mentorship looks like a high five and a whisper in my ear, or a yell across the hallway. You know, don't give your whole life away to ministry, right? Um, don't say yes to everything. The people who helped me to discern about different paths, whether it was Dr. Crystal or Reverend Dr. Julia Brown Krimu, different paths in ministry, and how I can put it all together, which have helped me to be where I am now, right? Like I get to um, be part of faith communities. I get to preach and teach and do workshops occasionally. And I also get to be a full-time marriage and family therapist. But those people who were not official mentors, or not even, and when they came into my life, they weren't even official sisters, right? There was a very cursory acknowledgement of personhood and connection. But that said, we see you, and we want to walk with you, which for me is also an important part of like mentorship specifically, is the walk with, as opposed to let me give you these directions and tell you this is where you're supposed to go, as opposed to I see these things in you, let me help you on this journey that is yours, but we are here standing with you in it.
That's so powerful, and I want to hold on a little bit there, if you allow me. This whole idea of there's power in being seen that you mentioned, Reverend Chesler, and Taplin, you mentioned before that Gen Zs are craving for community, that sometimes you guys don't know how to ask for it, or you're needing guidance, but you don't know how to ask others, see me, look at me, pick me. And if we connect those threads, or at least if I connect those threads in my brain, it makes me wonder, what does it mean to be truly seen across generations? Especially, I would love to hear from you, Taplin, especially for a generation like yours, for Gen Zs that spent some of your most formative years in isolation due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Like a lot of you, a lot of your generation had to either start college in isolation or have high school graduations or college graduations like drive through, and didn't get to have that sense of community that helps to build the social skills for that mentorship relationship. So I would love to hear from you, Taplin, that your take on this.
So it's really funny because I started my college experience 2017, and then I ended it 2021 for my bachelor's in the COVID pandemic. And so I was thriving, doing what I did, having community, joining so many groups, being around my friends. And then by my senior year, I thankfully was able to walk at graduation, but with a mask on, separated from people that I spent all of my formative years with, had to take online classes, and was just really closed off from the world. And now going into the workforce, they're like, okay, here you go, just let's do this. And with the global pandemic and with the economic crisis that was happening, it was hard and it was scary. And it's difficult when you want to make connections with people, but you have to do it through a screen. Right. And so after I graduated from Philadelphia, I moved to LA, and my first job was work from home. I didn't see anyone. I still work from home. Like, I think COVID has now put me in this little square, and I'm too anxious to talk to people. I don't really speak up for myself as much, as even though I'm in this outspoken generation where we want to be seen. I think it's hard because we're in a community online where everyone's just kind of in their own bubble doing their own thing. And it's easy to then just think that the world kind of revolves around you, and that, you only have your own self. It's easy to think that, there really isn't any community. No one's really going what I'm going through. And so when it's time to actually reach out to others and be able to have a community, it's awkward, or it feels as if, I don't really know how to approach having a relationship with this person without making it feel transactional, or making it feel like I actually want a friend, but I actually do need help with a certain thing. So, like, what can you actually do for me? So I think it was really, really interesting being in a position where you go from community is so important, community is such a thing that, like, forms you as a person, than to being isolated and not having that community. But for me, it's hard to break out of those barriers after being locked away for so long. Like, how do you do it? Um, so yeah, it's a weird thing to go through. and I'm still going through. And I think it affects me now. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I could just go outside. I could just reach out to people. I could just, actually send somebody a message and want to go out and meet them in person. But because of the world that came to a halt for so long, it kind of crippled the way that me and my generation thinks, where it's like, no, I think I'm just gonna stay to myself. And it's better to just be online, or I don't want to pick up the phone anymore. I used to be able to call people on the phone, and even that is such, people have anxiety doing that now. It's like, no, I'd rather you just text me. That's okay. So yeah, it's really real. So I would like to know how, the older generations do it, because I think it's really, really interesting that I'm not really sure of who I am, and as a professional or in my personal life, because of how much isolation has done to me, if that makes sense. You're on mute.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's just, if for those of us who had a little bit of a taste of what professional life looked like before the pandemic, it's always so interesting to hear what Gen Zs have been going through. And I don't know if Reverend Sharissna, you were ready to um, jump in. I see that you unmuted yourself. I was muted, but thank you, Kathleen, for naming that it's not, because I also want to maybe highlight it, and hearing you helps me understand that a lot of the times those of us a little older generations from Gen Zs may think of you all like, oh, they are uninterested. They don't want this. They are so rude. They are so dismissive because they don't, they don't want to get better. They don't want to do better. And a lot of the times I forget, I was gonna say I forget that we all went through a major trauma worldwide and how that impacts generationally. And thank you for naming that. And thank you for naming that as a factor in how your mentorships are played and happen.
Taplin, I so appreciate that testimony, quite frankly, and perspective for many of us who of a different generation, and we're still learning, right, how to be in community with your generation. So thank you for sharing that. I want to name that there has always been generational tension, right? My mama's generation, my grandma's there's always been generation conflict and tension. I think we're experiencing it differently because it seems to be more pronounced and louder because of technology and social media, I would suggest, right? I also think there's another valuable in this tension and the ways it shows up in community or in relationship with one another is, we were sharing this before we went live. I'm of the generation that have both experience, no technology, very little technology, and a lot of technology, right? And then Taplin, you're in a generation where, you 3 years old, you got a cell phone and you know how to run it, right? My 1-year-old godson knows how to turn on and turn off the telephone at 1, right? So it's a technology generation. So I think part of the tension that we have to name is the way in which technology has influenced the way in which we are in community, right? And how we define community, how we define success, how we define work ethic. I'm of the generation, I stayed up late night watching Michael Jordan win an NBA championship with the flu, right? And you tapped in the generation that says, I'm sick, I ain't coming in, right? And so I'm of the generation that says, keep moving, keep going, even though it costs you your wellness, your health, your wellness, your self-care, right? You come from a generation that says self-care is important. So We're going to take care of myself first, right? At least this is how I experience this tension when I'm in relationship with. So I often say part of this work around mentorship, journeying alongside generationally, is to be able to see what we can learn from one another. I have a lot to learn from Taplin and others around self-care and when to stop, right? Where I have a lot to learn around relaxing my expectations as it relates to success, as it relates to working hard. I have a lot to learn around health, wellness, success. And I'm sorry, the alarm is going off. I have some work being done in the house. A lot to learn around that. Boundaries, right? We working from home, Taplin, and because I'm working from home, I have an office at home. I have no office hours because I'm always in my office, in my computer working, right? And so I think there is this need for us to understand and see the ways in which we can learn from each other in order for us to be better.
Yes, yes, yes. And Reverend Shurisna, your alarm went off at the right time because it is actually time for us to start wrapping up things to allow time for people to ask any questions or comments, whether you want to put them in the chat. I am not sure if you can get on mute on the webinar option of this. So at least please start typing any questions or comments that you want us to expand on or would like any of our panelists to expand on. And to kind of close this, I will shake some things up because I want to, there's something, this series of conversations and panels stemmed from something that I started seeing and I wanted to explore in community. I got to be honest, and at times, a lot of the times, people have this concept, this idea of mentorship as just creating mini-me versions. I've had that experience and I'm not in that mentorship relationship anymore because I realized, oh, this person really just wants me to be like them. And that's not what I'm looking for. I need someone just like, I think it was Taplin or Reverend Chesla that were saying like, you need to be challenged. It's the sisterhood and the both, you know, both ways. So I think that instead of helping their mentees become their better versions of themselves, there's some like ego involved. And I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks that. And that's why I've started opening these panels to talk a little bit about that. So anyone has anything to say about this, or am I the only one?
I want to say something. First of all, I want to thank Taplin for her vulnerability tonight on the screen. What a gift. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm an old lady and I feel you, you know, but I wonder about expectations. You know, what are the expectations of the relationship and having some understanding of what it is we're doing here. And when you have that understanding of what we're doing here, then you receive the sisterhood or the mentorship as an invitation to go deeper. An invitation to go deeper, an invitation for growth, an invitation to responsibility and accountability. That is an invitation that we journey together. And so if I'm journeying with you, there is no way you can be a mini me. You know, this is no way. This is not Cinderella and you put on the stepsister's clothes. You know, but I also want to mention this too, real quickly. I think it's the spirit at work in both you and me. And I think it's soul crying out to soul. Something coming together, fusing together, saying yes. And you lead some, and I stand with you. I lead some, you stand with me. We come to a plateau. then we're moving again at the invitation and the surrender and the permission of one another. You, Dr. Crystal.
Bishop, I love that. And Barry, I'm so appreciative that you named me ego. And it's something that we all have to check, right? And so to be transparent as a mentor, that's one of the things that I'm constantly needing to check in relationship with, not around this notion that I want you to be like me, but the ways I have defined for myself what it means to be a Black woman, right? And making room for the ways that other people defined it and want to live that out. That was hard, right? Because I grew up at a time where being a Black woman was my superpower, particularly when I was in a stage in my life where I fell in love with being a Black woman, right? It became a superpower, right, for me. And so my vision, my definition, my way, it was me wanting to project that on folks that I'm journeying alongside. And those relationships didn't last long because I had one way and they had another, and their way was wrong in my mind, but I was wrong. Right. And so, absolutely, I appreciate even Bishop talking about the ways in which the divine is activated in us in these relationships, and how do we make room for, right, for the divine to give us new revelation, even about ourselves, as we journeying alongside of people who are discovering who they are. It is a spiritual discipline to check your ego when you're in relationship with others. Absolutely.
Because when you discover you, I discover me if we journey in together. And the whole concept of we're one.
It's always a becoming journey, right? So you never arrive, you're always becoming. And that was just a hard lesson that I had to learn in losing relationships, right? That I haven't arrived as a Black woman, I'm still becoming one. And so what are ways Taplin can teach me about Black womanhood that I haven't discovered yet? Right. And that is an ego check. That's a humility, right? That's a posture that that I have, and I'm still learning, because I still, again, have strong, right, perspectives and understandings of Black woman. And then Tapman comes to give me a different perspective, and I'm like, oh, right. And so, what are ways that we are receiving in these relationships? That, so I appreciate again this notion, Taplin, that you gave, that this mutual, there's a sacred mutual exchange that's always happening. If you're showing up with this notion that you are the only one with information to give, you've already failed.
Yeah, exactly. Even being a youth leader, and even being when I was called to be a youth leader only 2 years ago, I was like, Bishop, me, I don't have nothing to say to these, like, I don't have anything to actually share, And like talking to a younger generation, I talk to kids that are 12, 15, and they look up to me and they're like, oh, like there's so much valuable information that you have, which really affirms me in terms of the fact that, like, oh, I actually have something that's of value to you. Like, I think about that with my peers, like with my mom, with my aunties, with, like my teachers, my professors. Like, I don't, it's really affirming to know that, like, you're still being watched. You're like, people are still looking at you and seeing you and how you operate in your life, and that you can still learn something from them too. And it is a humble posture that you always have to be on. I always have to check myself, even when I'm doing the gardening at my church. I'm like, people look to me and they're like, oh, you know what you're doing. I'm like, girl, no, I don't, please help, and that's something that I have to check myself every day and talk to myself and say, you're not the smartest in the room. There's people that are also here that have valuable information to share. But that's also an affirming thing too, knowing that the information you also have within yourself is valuable.
Wow, my God. I see the guide that we had for
Amen.
things and topics to address, and I'm like, we can't. But Chess, Reverend Chess, you were going to say, I don't want to steal away the thoughts.
No, I was just saying that felt like a solid benediction from Tafflin.
It was just like closing it up and bringing us all back to the very beginning. So yeah, we will probably have to have a part two about this. So if any one of the registrants wants to have a part two, please let us know if we were not too boring to you. But thank you all for your reflections. This has been, at least from a personal level, I was excited and very much looking forward to this, and I did not know how much this was going to be such a blessing to me. So thank you for this rich conversation, and let's open the floor to questions. I don't know if anybody, at least people do want to have part two. I love it. So I don't know if anybody wants to have any questions. I see that some comments that people were putting, especially towards the end as we were closing. But if there is any question that you may have, either generally or to either one of us, this might be your time, because we were talking about boundaries, right? And I'm a firm believer of honoring people's time. And some of you might be wondering what's for dinner. And some of us might be smelling already what others are having for dinner. So if you do have any questions that after this, some of us take time to process things and things come to mind. And if you would like to shoot us an email, our tech support is going to put my my email address in there, and you guys can just email me and ask for any follow-up, maybe for the part two that you all want to have. Any topics, any things, any questions that you want us to address, please let us know. I want to thank you all for being part of this sacred conversation, from this sacred time. May the seeds planted tonight, whether in Taplet's garden or in our hearts, grow into powerful relationships of support, growth, and transformation. Thank you all. Stay tuned for more information, and blessings to everyone tonight. Thank you.